ago. So Scott and Shayla and Jill want to know the story of when Aunt Joyce was born.
Well, that's been a long time ago. We were sitting there talking about it. It was a snowy day and it was cold. Dad, he was hanging around. Finally, he had to take and go to Omaha to haul cattle. So he left, and his mom's sister came over, Aunt Lila. She stayed with us, and we hung around there waiting and waiting Saturday and Sunday. And Dwight, I don't know where he went, but he was gone. Never stayed around much. But I don't know, it seemed like it was right around 8 o'clock in the evening, Mom started having labor and stuff. And Dolores and I was always sitting around the stove trying to keep warm. But it went well, I guess. It wasn't too long before we heard them crying in there. But it was in the house next to where we have our home place. We lived there for quite a while. And it was cold and nasty day when she was born, but
Was there? So they were in another room.
yeah, she had a bedroom there, and it was right off in the living room. And so we just had one stove to try to keep warm. But it went well, as far as I know.
How did she?
I was pretty
how
young.
did Grandma keep warm?
I don't know. They never let us in the room for quite a while until after the baby was born.
Yeah.
But we always wore extra clothes.
So was it just Grandma and her sister?
That was all that was there at the time of the birth and stuff, you know.
Was that typical? And did you all?
Yeah, a lot of times there was only one or two doctors around, and they was always on some call, you know, so they never usually came around, but they never had hospitals to go to. They stayed home and had their kids at home. But
So did you get to see Dolores did you get to see Joyce that night?
yeah, and Daddy came home probably about maybe an hour later after she was born, and by the time then Lila brought her out and showed us, and of course Daddy got home then, and but that's the way it always was. It seemed like you always had to work and never could be together.
And was she healthy and everything after that? Any issues?
Yeah, everything seemed to go well, and Joyce was well, and had no problems that I recall.
Did you and Dolores take care of her much?
Well, we always did what we could. I was only probably, 4?
Oh.
About 4.
Okay.
Well, I was 28 and she was 34, so yeah, I was 4. But,
So you
and
were
Lila stayed a while, you know, her kids are older and didn't need her. And I don't know if they was on the farm at that time or if they was living with my grandfather,
Lila?
Engelke.
Lila?
Yeah, Lila and Burl and the kids and stuff.
So they lived out on a farm?
No, they lived down in Old Town there. I think I showed you guys one time we went through there. It was a little old house that had 1, 2, maybe 3 bedrooms in it, and that was all a kitchen and lean-to, build a lean-to onto it again.
Yeah.
But
Did Grandma ever say anything about the birth after that? Or?
no, I never heard say much going on. It was just a natural thing for them back in them days to have them at home. And
did they take her to the doctor or anything anytime? Did they have her checked out or no?
I don't know if they did or not. They did have the doctor Jensen in town, so I suppose he looked at her when he got back and got her from where he was at. But I'd imagine he was treating her a few times during pregnancy, but didn't have much in them days. They couldn't afford to go to the doctor, so they just never did.
Yeah.
But, that's why a lot of them didn't make it. But
Yeah, that's for sure. Anything else about that night you remember?
Nothing except it was awful cold, and Loris and I was all huddled around the stove and waiting, and we sat up maybe until midnight or so, and after the baby was born. But yeah, and I think we lived there another year, 2 years, and then we moved into a different building. And I must have been about 7 when they bought this house where we lived in.
And that was, you said they bought that with Grandpa's
His
military thing?
muster and out pay that the Army finally come around, $900, and so we bought the house for that.
Because that was quite a long time after you'd gotten out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a long time. Yeah,
Because that was in the 30s?
That was in 35 probably,
Yeah.
and
And
he got out of the service in 1921, I think it was. He got mustered out.
so he stayed in after World War One.
Well, he was sick. He was in the flu epidemic,
Yeah.
and so they kept him until they got well or died, one of the two.
Where was he at all that time?
In New York, I believe, somewhere up in there.
Yeah.
He got back I was on the ship coming back
Yeah.
when everybody got sick, and
What was it, like 1918 when they were coming back, or do you remember 19?
the war was over in 1918, I believe, so it must have been right around that. And I'm sure they got rid of him as soon as they could.
So did he stay on that boat for over a year?
No, I think they was on shore in New York for that.
Oh, so they came off the boat, but they were still in New York.
Yeah, still in New York, I think. I don't know if it was Ellis Island somewhere where they kept them or what, but there was a lot of them that had the flu.
So was he sick that whole time, or just trying to recover after?
Recover, yeah. They was coming back, and when they got the flu on the ship, well, it just went around. Everybody got it more or less, and some of them didn't make it right away, and some of them got off and got in the hospitals. The tent hospitals, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But
And so where was Grandma at that time?
well, she was back in Newman Grove. She was probably 17, 18 then. I don't think she knew Dad until he got back from the service.
So she didn't meet him before he went to the war. Okay.
No.
Hmm.
They never did say how they met. But that was something. Grandpa Engelke had, what they have, 7 girls and 3 boys, I think it was. Frederick, Carl, and that was quite a family, but he couldn't take care of them all, so they kind of spread out and went to different homes and kind of kept them, helped them out.
Where was his wife at?
She had died in childbirth, I think, or a mom. His mom was the last one.
Really?
And
So how long do you think he had all those kids by himself?
I don't know, he was a shoemaker at that time. And Carl, I remember how old he was, but he went over and stayed with Aunt Muffley, so she adopted him. And that's why he changed his name to Muffley.
Yeah.
But never saw much of him, but he did come around once in a while and we got to meet him and everything, but later years.
Was he an older?
Yeah, he was about, he must have been older than some of the girls. I think it was all girls afterwards, but he must have had Carl, had Frederick, and he was a cowboy. I remember him being out in West, and he came back from rodeos and stuff, and he quit and he went down to Iowa. I don't remember what year that could have been, 35, 36. But he ended up marrying a woman down there in Foreman.
Hmm.
Had a boy they called Fredericks too.
And where was that at?
Clarinda, Iowa.
Clarinda,
is where they was
Iowa.
living.
Yeah. Well, that's good. All right. Well, I just wanted to get a little bit about Joyce's birth on there and see what we remember about that.